We would like to acknowledge that this podcast was recorded, produced, and created within the territory of Mi'kma'ki, the unceded ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq. Our relationship and our privilege to live on this territory was agreed upon in the Peace and Friendship Treaties of 1752. Because of this treaty relationship, it is to be acknowledged that we are all treaty people and have a responsibility to respect this territory.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to When Ducks Leave the Pond, the Mount Allison Alumni Podcast. I'm Carolle de Ste-Croix, the Alumni Director here, and today's a special edition of the podcast. We're very, very excited because, this is National Volunteer Week, and so we thought, let's do a special edition of the podcast, get some of our, wonderful alumni volunteers on the call and just have a conversation about what it means to volunteer, how it impacts, and all of those good things. We have three people, not one, but we have three people, and alumni directors aren't supposed to have favorites. But these are, at the current time, my favorite members of the executive of the Alumni Board. And so I'm really happy to be able to introduce Christy DeMont, class of 80. Christy is an IT consultant, and she's the past president of the Alumni Board. Hi, Christy.
Hey, Carol.
And we have Reid Harrison, member of the class of 59 and a lifelong volunteer here at Mount Allison and in many other areas. And Reid is a retired educator and administrator. Hi, Reid.
Good morning. Good afternoon there, Carol. Nice to talk to you face to face.
Yeah, it is really nice. And of course, we have Jonathan Graves, class of 2015. He is the vice president of the Alumni Board, an investment professional. And he and Reid join us from Halifax. Christy's joining us from Toronto. And we're going to get right into it. Okay, folks. You're volunteering. You're volunteering right now. And I know the three of you well enough to know that this is not limited to Mount A, and it's just part of your lives. So I'm going to start with you, Christy. Every volunteer has someone that has set an example. Who in your life inspired you to start volunteering in the first place?
Well, probably my mother. Now, my grandfather, my mother's father, was a Mount Allison graduate, class of 20, and always spoke proudly about Mount Allison. My mother didn't go to Mount A because she wanted to be a phys ed teacher, so she went somewhere else, also a very good school, but shall remain nameless. But I don't think between the two of them there was ever a prouder alumnus of an institution of the ones they went to. They both were always involved in reunions and going back and talking highly about the place. My mother in particular was in the education business for a while, being a phys ed teacher, and then became a financial planner and had this mission in life that, understanding the value of education and understanding the value of having financial support behind you meant you could kind of do whatever you wanted to do. You could take on a job, you could take on a career, you could do whatever. So those were the two things that were her themes for both her paid work and her volunteer work, of which she did a lot. She was also a relatively early feminist, so she enjoyed a lot of organizations that supported women, both, again, through financial support, but also educational support and emotional support. She was on the national executive of the YWCA for many, many years. And, understood that importance of financial and education as tools to see where you wanted to go. And so I think from both of them, and also my father, who also was a volunteer, not to the extent my mother was, because he was out earning a living for our family, but they always showed how to give back and how to participate and how to get engaged and stuff. When people came along and asked them to do things, they said yes. So I think that's mostly where I got it from.
Well, I would agree with that because every time I've asked you to do something, which has been many, 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 many times, you've always said yes. So I guess I should be grateful to your parents.
I guess you should.
John, you're one of the youngest members of the Alumni Board. Can you talk about what first inspired you to jump into volunteering at Mount Allison? Literally almost out of the gate.
No, great question. Girl, I think honestly, we had some conversation shortly after I graduated that piqued my interest, and I had my eyes open pretty early to how engaged our alumni network is, and B, how successful we are too. 26,000 may sound like a lot, and it also may sound like not that many, depending on who you talk to and who is a graduate of which university. But we definitely have a lot of very successful graduates from Mount A. Someone that came out of commerce. One of the questions you ask yourself quite quickly after you leave university is, how do I build my network? And how can I kind of get engaged with a lot of different aspects of maybe like things related to planning, like strategic planning, things related to, board work and volunteerism and stuff that it might be difficult to get your feet wet with. So those type of questions kind of crossed my mind quickly after I left. And I think after conversations with you and also conversations with one, Mr. Charlie Scott, I kind of piqued my interest, and that's really what I think originally got me engaged with the board.
Wow. It's hard to believe you graduated 10 years ago, though, because for me, you're still that little valedictorian running around and giving great speeches. It's gone by really fast.
It has, and to your point, it doesn't feel like I've left because got involved with the board pretty quickly after.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's one of the nice things about volunteering with Mount A is that it brings back those kind of images and memories, and you see students kind of doing the same things and experiencing the same things as you when you volunteer, and it's very inspiring.
And Mount A also, sorry, Mount A just it gave me and my wife actually, and many Allisonians share that story, share that commonality, I should say, but it gave me so much, and I just felt like I really wanted to be able to give back to something, and the fact that I've been able to do so has been very rewarding for me too, personally.
Yeah, the motivations for volunteering are, they change, I think, in different ways as we grow up, and but at the core, I think it's all about really trying to give something back. Reid, you have been a lifelong volunteer, Rotarian. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And there's a lot of talk right now about the changing nature of volunteerism, and that students, young people don't volunteer in the same ways. That in fact, there's kind of this. There's a lot of studies and work out there showing that volunteerism is really changing. Have you noticed any of those changes?
Well, Carol, earlier we chatted briefly about being at the last lecture, and I happened to be there. And I saw those students being introduced for student awards, and I was gobsmacked by their contribution that they're making in terms of their fellow students and their fellow man. I get a little cynical when we old people say, oh, it's not like it used to be. Hell, look, the world is in good shape. When you go and look at those students who are graduating from university, I think we're not in too bad a shape that they will bail us out of the screw-ups that we've made. Secondly, I was into Dartmouth High School on a completely unrelated education issue, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And there were some high school students trucking in food that ended up in the sort of central office and then distributed out. I have no idea what they were doing, but I'm sure that it was part of their volunteer efforts in terms of the school. So yes, it's different. And yes, it's had to be different after COVID or during COVID. And things are slowly changing back towards greater interpersonal contact, which I think we as humans need.
Yeah, I agree. It makes, there's some wonderful things about technology and being there virtually, but there's nothing quite like actually getting your hands on something and doing some work.
That's
Thanks,
right.
Reid. Christy, coming back to you. Now, as I alluded to, you've held a number of roles as a Mount A volunteer, literally been involved for decades. What stands out as your absolute favorite moment while volunteering at Mount A?
I gave some thought to this, and there was certainly been a number of favorite moments. I think getting to do an honorary tip-off when we had the CCAA Women's Basketball Championships, and I got to come out on court and do a tip-off between a couple of the players, having been a not very good but team member basketball player in my own time here. That was kind of a highlight. Oddly, perhaps to some, being involved in the recent presidential search was a highlight because I got to really understand what we were looking for and understand the kind of candidate we want to have to lead the organization, but also got to spend time with regents, some of the regents who I got to know really well, and some of the faculty and staff, and really getting a chance to see a lot of people through that process. It was a very consultative process. Really got me centered on who the university was, and kind of refreshed that thought for me. But as you know, and I think this is probably why you asked me this question, my favorite thing about being involved in the alumni board is convocation. And the I love the fact of the moment of pride and the moment of celebration of achievement for a number of students who are the first time university graduates in their family. And there's probably an equal number of graduates who have parents and grandparents in the audience who are also proud Mount Allison alumni. That there's that both new sort of newbies to the institution, but also people whose families have come for generation. That real trade-off, and I love the real trade-off of what is a medieval ritual. Like, people have been putting hoods on people and wearing colored hoods to recognize their accomplishments for 800 years. Like, this is a very it's in Latin. It's a very formal and structured process. But at the same time, Mount Allison's so small that you can have these little moments of delight within that process. You see students whose parents or professors come out and put their hoods on. You see people asking someone to shout out to their mom that it's her birthday. And of course, my personal one was I had a nephew who graduated in 2018. And when it was his turn to come across the stage, I got up and snuck around to the side of the stage and went to the registrar and asked her if I could give him his diploma. So after he had his degree conferred and shook hands with the president, I stepped out on the stage and handed him some diploma and gave him a hug and told him how proud of him I was. And my brother, his father, managed to get out of the aisle, take this beautiful picture of the two of us there in our hoods on the stage, having just received his degree. And it's a pleasure that is hard for me to imagine being duplicated. It was just so much fun. But the whole thing, getting to know people I mean, Reid and I are at the higher end of the number of years we've been alumni. And, we have one board member who's just graduated last year. Like, there's this whole wide range of people that you get to know through the process, and get to know the different things that they have, but they're also the things they have in common, the time at Mount Allison, and getting to become friends with people of all these different age eras and faculty eras and so forth. The whole thing's been really great. But yeah, the convocation, I love the procession. I love the hooding. I love the gowning. I love the whole thing.
Yeah, it's a pretty special day. It's always a very special day.
It is.
So I'm going to go to Jonathan now, and we're going to talk a bit about like your generation really understands the power of story. And when we talk about, we talk about a number of four, I call them the 4 T's, right? Talent, your time, testimony, treasure. That is what alumni can do for those are things they can do. And when we talk about testimony, what we're really talking about is something really simple and powerful. And that's about sharing your Mount A experience so that you can inspire other people to attend, young prospective students. Jonathan, why do you think that matters now?
I think everyone's so inundated with information now, and a lot of it being hard to sift through. I think especially if you're someone young, you're speaking from the perspective student, correct, Carolle? Someone who's considering coming to Mount Allison. You're inundated, especially using your social media accounts and so on. Like, you're so inundated with information and the benefits of all different things. And I find it can be quite noisy depending on the length of time you spend on platforms and stuff like that. But to your point about the testimony, if you're hearing it from people of different generations who, although we have different experiences, have a lot of commonality in the things that we really love about our institution or loved about our time at our institution, and now have and are giving of our time even now post, and we still speak very fondly of our time. You hope that can resonate with someone who's considering Mount A, and just say, listen, this is a diverse group of people, and really the only thing that brought us together is that we've all spent time in this special place, and that's enough for us. And it really causes, it brings us in harmony, or brings us we spend time and we laugh together as a group that we may otherwise not have if we didn't have Mount A as that common experience.
Carolle, can I jump in there on just
Of course.
piggybacking on what Jonathan has said? You know, I think one of the things that we can do as alumni is reach out if we see students who are appropriate for Mount A to ask them to consider Mount A. And as a volunteer, if you are asked by somebody to volunteer, you're more likely to follow that up. And so we as alumni, I know we have, recommend a student, and that's great. But if you know somebody in your neighborhood or in your social circle who has a student who looks like they would benefit from Mount A and contribute to Mount A, then ask them to consider it.
Yeah, and tell your story, right?
That's right.
That storytelling.
That's precisely it, yeah. And that's just piggybacking on what Jonathan just said.
Absolutely. And certainly, I mean, Reid, you've been kind of you've had a front row seat to Mount Allison's evolution for many decades. And
not as long as Christy, or
not as long as Christy. That's right. I was trying to be diplomatic. But Mount A is a place built on volunteerism, right? People are giving of their time, their testimony, their talent, and their treasure. How have you seen? What's one of the traditions or the spirit of the place that you think alumni volunteers help to keep alive?
Well, I think Mount A is small. And at some point, the university made the decision somewhere in the last 20, 30, 40 years that it was going to remain a small residential university. It did that. It has stuck true to its values, which has then led to strong interpersonal contact between students and professors, between students and staff, and we shouldn't forget them. And so Mount A is a small, very personal institution. And so consequently, from an alumni perspective, it is so interpersonal contacts that you have with the university, with your staff, who are very personable and very easy to deal with and very helpful. And they resonate with alumni in terms of that interpersonal contact, which I think in today's day and age, particularly post-COVID, is so ruddy important.
That's right. Yeah.
I'll just take it a step further too. Two of our grandkids ended up at graduate school. And one of the professors that she was working under said, he said, if I get a student from Mount A, he said, I'm quite happy to get a student from Mount A. He said, I don't have to know anything much more about them in terms of their marks. Because he said, I know that they have had to participate. They've had to make presentations. They haven't sat in a lecture room with 300 or 400 other people. So they're quite prepared to do independent study as they move on. And I think Mount A, with its academic staff, with its leadership staff, with its alumni staff, build on that. And Mount A has every reason to be proud. And so consequently, we as alumni, yes, we can joke with one another, we can tease one another, we can kibiss with one another, even if it's somebody who's only graduated 10 years ago and was a valedictorian. We have lots of fun kibitzing back and forth. And that's part of Mount A. And I think it's a very important part.
Yeah. I always say that, because at times we have, we often have great news and alumni are happy. And sometimes we have news or things that are happening that alumni aren't that happy about. And someone asked me about that a while ago, how does that make you feel when people are upset about a decision and et cetera, et cetera. And I said, look, why would I be upset? If you care enough about the place that you're happy when things are going well, but when you're not happy about a decision, it means you're engaged. It means you care enough to say something. I'm worried, I would worry if no one said anything to us about anything. And so I always say that our alumni, all our alumni want is to have, for the current students and future students, to have the same immersive, life-changing experience that they had while they were here. Might look different, but honestly, I've been here long enough now, I can tell you that it feels the same. It's hard to explain. The buildings might have changed, the people might have changed, but the place feels the same. And so
dovetailing on what you say, Carolle, just keep it brief here. You're a student at Mount A for 4 or 5 years, but you're an alumnus for 60 or 70 years.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we forget that, and maybe the institution forgets that.
Yeah.
Because it's very important that alumni continue to be engaged, and you and your colleagues do an excellent job in terms of that.
Well, thank you very much. Listen, it's hard to believe, but our time is just about up. Was there kind of any, I know some of you had, Christy had a great answer to the question about what their favorite moment, what her favorite moment is in terms of volunteering at Mount A. John, did something come to mind with you, kind of that lovely kind of, oh, that was nice moment?
I find, like, to Christy's point, there's these little moments throughout your volunteerism where you experience that. Like I kind of reflected when Christy was talking about convocation, and have been fortunate enough to share the experience of just kind of being able to proceed and sit on the stage, and that's obviously one. Football, as I played football during my time. It's obviously it's a program that's very near and dear to my heart. So there's been some volunteerism with regards to that I've been very passionate about. But ultimately, I think it's the connections and the relationships that you build with alumni in your capacity as a volunteer. Just because, again, a lot of us share that passion for the institution. And again, we can all laugh about stories regardless of what generation or what class you come from. So I also, and we've had some discussions recently about the alumni banquet, and that's one that I do really enjoy. I really like hearing all the class cheers and watching everyone kind of process in, and there's always a buzz in the room at that time, and then there's the award winners and everything. That's a time that I really going into it, I didn't think that much about, but when I do get to participate in it, I do really appreciate doing it every time.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wait till you get your chance to herd all the cats at the alumni banquet, John, and trying to get all those cheers organized and it's a big job, I'll tell you.
Gotta get everyone off the tables. Can we get everyone off the tables, especially in the back?
Exactly. It's a lot of fun, though. You're absolutely right. Like just listening to all the different groups and seeing their banners up on the walls. Is
that class 83 there?
Yeah.
Horsing around? Yeah.
That's
exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
my favorite moment, certainly my favorite moment, and I think you'll all agree with me, is when something magical. Mount A does something that no other place does in Canada, to my knowledge, is that we have graduation weekend, convocation weekend, at the same time as we have reunion. And that's because we have capacity in the residences. We have no real, not a lot of hotels, motels, so we're able to do it. And that connection that happens with those graduating students and those alumni are amazing. But what always makes me laugh out loud is when alumni start sharing their stories and the grads are like, what? There is no way we could have possibly done that. We would have been arrested or thrown out of here. So it's that moment where the young grads realize, oh, hold on, maybe we didn't have they seem to have a lot more fun than we did. And it's amazing to see their faces as they realize. And I'll get texts and stuff from graduates on that weekend saying like, oh my God, can the class of 1973 ever party? And it's amazing to them. And it's just, that's always my favorite moment. Reid, do you have one?
I would just ditto what Jonathan and Christy said. I mean, those experiences and those interpersonal relationships are so crucial. The other thing is the banquet, yes. And David Mawhinney's presentation at the end, and through his archival experience and those archives that we provide to him, he's able to bring those forth at that banquet, and it brings back very fond memories.
Indeed.
The other thing sorry, I keep jumping in. The other thing that's funny about it is, everywhere you go, when you're on the alumni board, everywhere you go, there's a Mount Allison reunion breaks out, right? Like I was early on in my tenure on the alumni board, I was at a funeral for a cousin of mine, dear cousin, who died tragically way too young. And Reid's there because Reid was a neighbor of this cousin. And so we start talking and a few other people gather around. And a couple hours later, my brother, who's also there, not a Mount Allison graduate, says to me, who are all those people you were talking to? I said, I'm on the alumni board now. Everywhere I go, a reunion breaks out. That was our little Mount A mini reunion. That's what that was. And it was true. It was just a bunch of people talking about, Marilyn was there. We were just talking about what experiences and what we'd had. And that was the glue, the connection between us all, even at a completely unrelated, separate event.
Isn't it awful when you get older and you have a memory? About 2 weeks ago, I was in a parking lot. Now, my license plate says MTAFAN. My kids gave it to me 1,000 years ago that I keep paying, and when I renew, at a higher rate because it's a personalized plate. I was sitting there minding my own business, and this guy raps on the window. And I thought, oh, shit, what did I do here? And roll down. He said, is that Mount A? I said, yeah. He said, I graduated from Mount A 50 years ago. He said, I'm going up for my reunion this May. He said, my God, he said, I had a great time there. He said, my daughter went there. He said she was shy and retiring. But because of that experience at Mount A with the small classes and what have you, he said it really brought her out of her shell. So out of innocence, be it a funeral or a license plate, that connection is there.
Absolutely. Thank you all very much. This has been a great pleasure. I speak with all of you almost every week, but this is, it was fun to have this kind of quiet time and really do some reflection. I think what we're going to leave folks with is please use the refer student line if you know of any prospective students that we can talk to about Mount A. And number two, we're always looking for volunteers in your communities to do sociables for us. And now with, of course, virtually, we can do a lot more volunteering that way. So we do have a form online. Don't be shy. We'd love to have you.
And
Thanks,
if you can
everyone.
make the time, come back for reunion.
And yes, and come back for reunion. Come back for reunion. Always so much fun. Thanks, you three. Christy DeMont, Reid Harrison, Jonathan Graves. Thanks all.
Thanks, Carl. Take care.
A sincere thank you to the executive producer and director of our podcast, Kay, who is the quadrant intern at the Alumni Engagement Office. A sincere thank you to them, and especially to the fine folks at CHMA FM Radio who have made all of this possible by allowing us to use their facilities here on campus.
Mount Allison strives to be a safe, respectful, and welcoming place for people of all genders, diverse sexualities, gender identities, and gender expressions through education, programming, support, and advocacy. We prioritized upholding, maintaining, and honoring that environment during the creation of this podcast.